The war between the human colonies and the Virene Empire had lasted for years. In the far reaches of the galaxy, deep inside the stormy world of HFY, a joint alliance unit was stationed to guard the last energy outpost. The station powered the shield network that protected several nearby colonies. Losing it would mean losing thousands of lives. Among the soldiers posted there was a human named Ryan Hale. He was tall, but quiet, the kind of man who worked more than he spoke. His armor was old, scratched, and heavy, but it carried the marks of countless battles. He had joined the Virene-led unit 2 years earlier, one of only a few humans trusted to serve alongside aliens who often saw humans as unpredictable. The Virene were tall, graceful beings with smooth silver skin and eyes like crystal. They valued control and reason above all things. Emotions to them were weaknesses. Humans, by contrast, lived with emotion at their core, and that difference had created many silent tensions inside the unit. Ryan's commander, Alira Voss, was a respected Virene officer. She was known for discipline and a sharp mind. Her commands were always precise, her tone always cool. She never raised her voice, yet her words could strike harder than any weapon. The morning briefing began like any other. The soldiers stood around a hollow table that showed the terrain outside the base. A thick storm was rolling in from the north, bringing acid winds and electric rain. The outpost had already lost 2 shield generators the night before. Someone had to go out and fix them before the storm arrived. Ryan studied the hollow map quietly, noting the shortest route through the rocky path. "If we take the crawler up this ridge, I can reach both generators in one trip," he said calmly. "It'll save time before the storm hits." Alira turned toward him, her silver eyes cold. "You human would go alone into that storm? You think your metal shell can withstand acid rain?" Ryan gave a faint smile. "It's not about the armor. It's about time. The longer we wait, the more power we lose." Her expression hardened. "You always think with your feelings, not logic. Do you even understand how important that shield is? If you get lost or fail, we lose everything." Ryan stayed silent for a moment. He could feel every eye in the room on him. "Commander, I've done it before. I know the route. I'll finish the job." Alira's tone turned sharp. "You humans always say you can do everything. You rush forward without thinking and cause trouble for the rest of us. You should be grateful that we even allow you to serve here." The room went quiet. Even the humming sound of the power cores felt distant. The words hit Ryan harder than he expected. It wasn't the first time someone doubted humans, but coming from a commander he had risked his life for, it felt different. He slowly lifted his helmet off the table. "Permission to speak freely?" Alira folded her arms. "Granted." He looked at her calmly. "You may not like humans, Commander. But remember, when the northern outpost was collapsing last month, it was a human who stayed behind to hold the line. When the shield generator failed 2 weeks ago, it was me who went outside during the lightning storm. I didn't do it for glory. I did it because we're a team." His voice stayed low but steady. "I didn't come here to argue about what species is better. I came here to protect this station." Alira's eyes narrowed. "You think words can change facts? You rely on emotion instead of logic. That is why your kind will always be unpredictable. That is why you are a burden." The final word, burden, hung in the air like a blade. Ryan stood motionless. No one in the room spoke. The Virene soldiers looked away, uncomfortable. Even the few humans on the team lowered their heads. Ryan didn't shout. He didn't defend himself further. Instead, he unlatched the clips on his armor. The metallic sound echoed across the room as one piece after another came loose. The chest plate hit the table with a dull thud. Then the shoulder guards, the arm plates, the helmet. Every piece he removed seemed to make the silence grow heavier. When he was done, he stood there in the thin undersuit, covered in oil stains and dust from past missions. He looked at the armor for a long second. Then he turned toward Alira and said quietly, "Understood, Commander." He walked out of the command room without another word. The others didn't move for several seconds. Alira kept her arms crossed, but her eyes followed him as he disappeared through the doorway. She wanted to say something, to order him back, but pride locked the words inside her throat. Outside, the cold wind howled. Ryan stepped into the open air of HFY. The sky was dark with storm clouds, lightning flashing behind the mountains. The base lights glowed faintly in the dust. He looked out over the horizon, his mind heavy. He remembered when he had first joined the Alliance. Back then, Humans were the newcomers of the galaxy, seen as the least advanced and most emotional race. Yet they had something others didn't: heart. Humanity's strength wasn't in logic but in courage, in the way they stood up when hope seemed lost. He had carried that belief into every mission, but Alira's words had made him question if that belief even mattered anymore. He walked past the supply depot where the young engineer, a small Virine named Lero, worked on broken drones. "Ryan," the boy called. "Where are you going?" "The storm's coming soon." Ryan gave him a small nod. "Just getting some air, kid." "Don't worry," Lero frowned. "You're not mad, are you?" "Commander Alira doesn't mean it. She just trusts logic too much." Ryan smiled faintly. "No, I'm not mad. People say things in war they don't always mean. Take care of the drones, all right?" He kept walking until the camp lights faded behind him. The ground beneath his boots was rough and dry. He could hear thunder far off, rolling like distant drums. Each step away from the base felt heavier than the armor he had left behind. Inside the base, Alira stood still before the table where his armor lay. The surface reflected the dim blue light of the holotable. For a moment, she saw her own reflection beside the empty suit and felt a strange tightness in her chest. She pushed it away and turned to her officers. "Prepare the unit. The storm will be here soon." Dismissed. The soldiers obeyed, but their movements lacked energy. They had seen the human silence. It had spoken louder than any protest. Later that night, Alira sat in her private quarters. The rain outside struck the walls with a sharp hiss. She opened her datapad and looked through Ryan's service record. Mission after mission, his name appeared beside dangerous tasks: repairs under fire, rescue operations, power core replacements. Each report praised his calm under pressure. She closed the pad slowly. For the first time, she wondered if her words had gone too far. But before she could think further, the base alarm sounded. An alert flashed across her screen. Enemy activity detected near the outer ridges. She rose to her feet, her mind shifting back into command mode. "All units prepare for defense positions," she ordered through the comm. But even as she spoke, a thought lingered in her mind. Ryan is gone. Outside, far beyond the safety of the base, Ryan stood on a cliff overlooking the valley. He watched as lightning split the sky in two, lighting up the battlefield where shadows moved in the distance. He could see the faint glimmer of the damaged generators that powered the outpost shield. They were failing fast. He took a deep breath and sat on a rock, resting his hands on his knees. For now, he didn't know what he would do next. The sting of Alira's words still burned in his chest, but somewhere beneath the hurt, something steadier was forming. A quiet resolve. He wasn't angry. He wasn't broken. He simply knew that actions would speak louder than words, as they always had for humanity. The storm grew louder, the air charged with energy. Inside the base, soldiers rushed to their posts. Alira stood by the command screen, staring at the empty armor that had once stood for something she had not yet understood. And outside, in the howling wind, a lone human sat in silence, waiting for the storm to come. The storm came faster than expected. Acid rain slashed across the barren ground of HFY, each drop sizzling as it touched metal. The defense towers stood like tall shadows in the darkness, their sensors struggling to see through the thick clouds. Inside the outpost, the soldiers moved quickly, sealing hatches and powering up shields. Commander Alira Voss stood before the main screen, watching the energy levels drop. The damaged generators outside were failing again, their signals flickering. The storm had worsened faster than the forecast predicted. Without those generators, the outer shield would collapse within hours. "Status report," Alira ordered. Lieutenant Ryanar, a Virine officer with sharp features, checked the readings. "The north and west generators are offline. The eastern one is running at only 30%. If the storm keeps up, we will lose it." Alira folded her arms, her mind racing. "Send a drone team to repair them." "The drones can't survive that rain," Ryanar said. "We already lost 2. Silence filled the command room. Everyone knew what that meant. The only way to fix the generators was to go out there in person, but no one spoke the thought aloud. No one wanted to volunteer. Alira turned to look at the holotable where Ryan's armor still lay. The faint light reflected off the scratches and burn marks that told stories of countless battles. For a brief moment, she saw the memory of his calm expression when he had said, "It's not about the armor. It's about time." Her chest tightened. She pushed the thought away and turned back to her crew. "Prepare the defense weapons," she said. "We hold the base until morning. Outside, far from the base, Ryan Hale sat in a rocky hollow beneath a cliff. The storm was heavy, the wind sharp enough to sting his face. His undersuit was not meant for long exposure, but it was holding up for now. He had taken shelter near an old cargo wreck, using its hull to shield himself from the worst of the rain. He stared into the distance where the faint glow of the outpost could still be seen. He could picture them inside, moving around, following orders, trying to survive. For a moment he thought about going back, but pride and pain kept him still. He knew what Alira had said wasn't just about him. It was about what many in the Alliance thought of humans. They saw humans as emotional and short-sighted, a race that relied on instinct instead of reason. But what they never understood was that emotion was not weakness. It was what gave humans strength when logic alone could not carry them through. He remembered his old commander from Earth's Defense Corps, a grizzled veteran named Markson, once telling him, "When logic fails, heart keeps you moving." Those words had guided him through every fight. Now, sitting in the cold, Ryan could hear the low rumble of thunder rolling over the horizon. He saw the faint red sparks from the failing generators. He knew what that meant. The shield was dying, and when the shield died, the outpost would be open to attack. He sighed softly, running a hand over his face. He wasn't angry anymore. He just felt tired of trying to prove that humans mattered. Then, faintly through the storm, a small drone hovered near the cliff. Its lights flickered weakly. Ryan watched it struggle to stay in the air before it crashed into the mud beside him. He rushed forward and picked it up. The screen on its side still worked, showing a broken message repeating over and over. "Outer shield at critical level. Immediate repair required. All units stand by." Ryan stared at the message, his jaw tightening. He didn't need anyone to tell him what that meant. The base was in danger. If no one went out there, everyone inside, including Alira, would be trapped. He looked at the storm again, then at his empty hands. He had no armor, no tools, no orders. Just himself. And that was enough. He stood up, covering his face against the rain, and began walking toward the damaged generator fields. Inside the outpost, Alira paced near the window. The glass was thick and reinforced, but she could still see flashes of lightning through the dark clouds. Each time the sky lit up, she felt a small jolt of fear. She didn't like admitting fear, not even to herself. Lero, the young Vereen engineer, rushed in with a tablet in hand. "Commander, the energy output dropped again. The eastern generator is almost gone." Alira clenched her jaw. "Seal the secondary doors. Prepare the shield batteries for overload." "But that will burn out the cores," Lero said softly. "I know," she replied. "But we don't have another option." Lero hesitated, then spoke again. "Ryan would know how to fix it." Alira's head snapped toward him. "What did you say?" "He worked on those cores last month," Lero said. "He built a bypass circuit in case something like this happened. I don't think anyone else knows how to use it." The room fell silent. Alira felt the words pierce her like a blade of truth. She turned her eyes to the armor again, remembering the day Ryan had risked his life to repair those same generators under heavy fire. He had saved them then, and now, because of her pride, he wasn't here to do it again. She whispered to herself, "Where are you, human?" Outside, Ryan climbed across the rocky slope. The wind pushed hard against him, but he kept moving. The acid rain burned small holes in his suit, and every step was slippery with mud. When he finally reached the first generator, sparks flew from the exposed cables. The metal smelled like ozone. He opened the access panel and started working. His fingers moved quickly, guided by muscle memory. The main power line had melted from the storm's heat. He tore a strip from his undersuit, wrapped the damaged section, and rerouted the current manually. The hum of energy returned, faint but alive. The screen flashed green for a moment, stability restored. Ryan allowed himself a small smile. "One down," he said quietly. "Two to go." He moved toward the next generator, the one closest to the ridge. The climb was steep and dangerous. Lightning flashed nearby, throwing light across the valley. When he reached the top, he could see the entire base in the distance. Its blue shield shimmered weakly, barely holding against the storm. He worked fast again, hands numb from cold. The second generator took longer, its inner circuits completely fried. He used pieces from the fallen drone to create a temporary patch. As he worked, he thought about Alira's words once more. "You are a burden." He stopped for a second, looking up at the dark sky. Maybe I am, he said to himself. But I'll still do what's right. The second generator came back online with a low hum. The blue light over the base grew brighter. He looked toward the last one far across the valley. It was half buried in debris, probably hit by lightning. He knew it would take everything he had left to reach it. Back in the command room, alarms began to fade. Reinar looked at his screen in confusion. Commander, the East and North generators just came back online. I don't understand, no one is out there. Alira froze. What did you say? They're stable. Energy flow rising again. Someone must have repaired them. Laro's eyes widened. It's him. It has to be him. Alira stared at the storm through the window. He went out there without armor. Her voice trembled slightly. It wasn't fear now, it was realization. The man she had insulted had returned to save them again. She felt something heavy inside her shift, a mix of shame and admiration. She had judged him through the lens of logic, yet his heart had done what logic never would. Activate the search radar, she ordered. Find his signal. Bring him back alive. Outside, Ryan reached the final generator. His hands were bleeding from the sharp metal edges, but he didn't stop. The rain hit his face, the wind screamed, but he kept working. He pulled out the last wire connection and used his bare hands to lock it in place. Sparks flew, lighting his face in the stormlight. The power grid surged back online. The shield over the base grew bright blue again, stronger than before. Inside, Alira watched the readings spike upward. The base was safe. Every soldier cheered, but her heart was still heavy. Where is he? She whispered. Still no signal? Reinar said softly. Alira looked down at Ryan's armor lying cold on the table. The reflection of its surface showed her face, pale and silent. Then we find him, she said. No one walks away like that and disappears. Far out in the storm, Ryan leaned against the generator, exhausted. The light from the machine shone over him, casting a blue glow across the wet rocks. He could see the base shield shining again, bright and alive. He smiled weakly. Looks like you're safe now, he murmured. The wind carried his words away into the night. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the rain wash over him. He didn't care about credit, about medals, or about being understood. All he cared about was that he had done what was right. Even if they never knew, he would know. That was enough. The storm raged on, but deep in the heart of that endless night, a single human's resolve burned brighter than any lightning across the sky. Morning came slowly to Careth 5. The storm clouds thinned, and the weak sunlight touched the metal walls of the outpost. The acid rain had stopped, leaving behind black marks on the ground and smoke rising from broken machines. Inside the command room, Commander Alira Voss stood over the main console. Her face was pale from lack of rest. She had stayed awake the entire night watching the radar, hoping to find any trace of the human who had gone out into the storm. Lieutenant Ryanar entered with a report in his hands. Commander, the outer shield is now fully stable. All 3 generators are working again. Whoever repaired them did excellent work. Alira looked at him. Any sign of the human? Reinar shook his head. No life signal detected. The storm scrambled the sensors. He may be anywhere out there. She turned toward the window. The valley stretched far beyond the base, a sea of ash and broken rocks. Somewhere in that wasteland, a man without armor had faced the storm alone and saved them. Lero, the young engineer, stepped forward. Commander, we should send a search party. Alira nodded. Prepare 2 scout teams. Equip them with hazard suits and signal beacons. We search until we find him. Reinar hesitated. Commander, the enemy might attack again. If we send men out now, the base will be weaker. She looked him straight in the eye. He went out there to protect us. I will not leave him behind. The officer lowered his head. Understood, Commander. Outside, a group of soldiers moved across the rocky field. Their suits shone faintly under the pale light. The wind had grown calm, but the ground was still wet and dangerous. They followed a faint trail of footprints leading away from the outpost. Meanwhile, far from them, Ryan Hale woke inside a small cave near the edge of the cliffs. His body ached from cold and his hands were covered in dried blood. His undersuit was torn, and one leg was injured from falling debris during the storm. He could barely move, but he was alive. The faint hum of the nearby generator reached his ears. Its steady rhythm told him the power grid was holding. That sound gave him peace. He slowly sat up and looked at the valley below. The base's blue shield glowed strong and steady. For the first time in hours, he smiled. He had done his part. He tore a strip from his sleeve and wrapped his leg. Every movement hurt, but he refused to stop. He searched through the wreckage around the cave and found an old supply crate half buried in the mud. Inside were dried rations, a small flashlight, and a half-broken transmitter. Ryan worked carefully on the transmitter, cleaning its wires and testing its signal. The screen flickered, showing a weak connection. He tried to send a short message, but stopped midway. If the enemy intercepted the signal, they might trace it to him and then to the base. He could not risk that. He decided to wait. Maybe they would come for him. Maybe they would not. Either way, he would find a way back once he could walk properly again. He leaned against the wall and rested his eyes. The sound of the wind outside was softer now, almost peaceful. For a moment, he let himself forget the pain. Back at the base, the search team spread out. Lero led one group, scanning the ground for signs of human presence. After several hours, they found the remains of the fallen drone near the cliffs, the same one Ryan had used. "This is his work," Lero said, kneeling beside the machine. "He used the core from this to patch one of the generators. Only he could think of something like that." Ryanar looked around. Then he must be nearby. "Keep searching." The team continued deeper into the valley. But just as they reached the ridge, an alarm sounded in their comms. Enemy ships had entered orbit. Elira's voice came through the channel. "All scout teams return immediately. The Vereen rebels are approaching from the east. We are under attack." Lero clenched his fists. "But Commander, we are close. If we leave now, we may lose him," Elira replied firmly. "That's an order, soldier. Get back to the base." Lero hesitated but obeyed. They turned back toward the outpost, the faint hope of finding Ryan fading behind them. High above the planet, dark shapes appeared in the sky. The Vereen rebels had returned, their ships moving like black shadows against the sun. Plasma fire rained down on the base, shaking the ground. Inside the command room, alarms blared. Elira gave orders calmly, her voice steady even as explosions echoed through the walls. "Activate all defense turrets. Focus fire on the eastern ridge. Keep the shield stable." The soldiers moved quickly, powering up cannons and redirecting energy. The blue shield shimmered under the first wave of plasma hits. Ryanar shouted, "Commander, their landing crafts are heading toward the valley. They will try to destroy the generators." Elira's eyes widened. "If they take the generators, the shield will fall. Send a strike team to defend them." Ryanar hesitated. "The terrain is open. Anyone out there will have no cover." She looked at him sharply. "Then we hold the line with everything we have." Out in the cliffs, Ryan heard the thunder of explosions. He crawled toward the cave entrance and saw trails of fire in the sky. His heart sank. The rebels were attacking again. He knew their strategy well. They would aim for the generators first, the same ones he had repaired. Without armor or weapons, he had no chance in open combat, but he could not stay hidden while others fought. He checked the broken transmitter again and managed to link it to the generator's signal. The readout showed several energy spikes near the eastern field. That meant enemy troops were already there. He grabbed a metal rod from the supply crate, fashioned it into a crude staff, and began limping down the slope toward the generator field. Every step sent pain through his leg, but he kept moving. When he reached the bottom, he saw smoke rising in the distance. The eastern generator was under attack. Plasma fire flashed around it, and small explosions shook the ground. He hid behind a large boulder and counted the attackers. 3 rebel soldiers, armored and armed. They were placing charges on the generator. Ryan looked around for anything he could use. Near the rock lay a broken service drone, its power cell still glowing faintly. An idea formed in his mind. He crawled to it, pulled out the cell, and adjusted the wires. The cell could overload and explode if connected wrong. He whispered under his breath, "Let's hope this still works." He threw the cell toward the generator base, aiming for the ground near the rebels. It hit the mud, sparked once, then exploded in a flash of blue light. The blast threw the rebels off their feet. Ryan rushed forward, ignoring the pain. He grabbed one of their dropped rifles and fired at the others. The fight was quick but violent. Ryan managed to disable the remaining 2 enemies and disarm the third, before collapsing beside the generator, breathing hard. His leg burned, his arms trembled, but he had saved the machine again. He pressed the emergency lock on the generator panel, sealing it with a personal code. Then he activated the distress beacon built into it. A blue flare shot up into the sky. Inside the base, Elira saw the flare on the radar. Her heart jumped. That's his signal. The human is alive. Lero smiled with relief. He's holding the eastern generator alone. Alira turned to her soldiers. Prepare the transport crawler. We are going to get him. Minutes later, the transport raced across the field, its engines roaring. Plasma bolts flew past as enemy fire followed them. Alira sat at the front, gripping the control bar tightly. Her mind focused on one goal, to reach Ryan before the enemy did. When they arrived at the generator field, the scene stunned them. Smoke and debris covered the ground. 3 rebel soldiers lay unconscious. And there, sitting beside the generator, was Ryan. His undersuit was torn, his body bruised, but his eyes were still bright. He looked up as the crawler stopped. You took your time, Commander. Alira jumped down and ran to him. You saved the base again. You should have stayed inside. Ryan gave a small smile. And miss all the fun? Lero and the others helped him onto the crawler. Alira looked around the battlefield once more. Let's go home, she said quietly. As the crawler drove back toward the base, the morning light grew brighter. The shield over the outpost shone like a second sun, strong and unbroken. Ryan leaned back against the seat, closing his eyes. He was exhausted, but a calm peace filled his heart. He had done what he had to do. Alira looked at him and finally spoke the words she had never said before. You were right, human. It's not the armor that matters. It's the heart inside it. Ryan smiled faintly but said nothing. The silence between them was no longer cold, it was full of respect. The transport crawler rumbled across the rocky valley, carrying Ryan Hale back to the outpost. His body ached with every movement. The bruises on his arms and legs throbbed, and the cuts from sharp debris stung with every bump. Yet despite the pain, he kept his eyes open, watching the world around him. Commander Alira Voss sat beside him in the transport cabin, her gaze fixed on the horizon. For hours she had been silent, letting the hum of the engines and the occasional thunder from the retreating storm fill the air. Her pride, which had earlier kept her from acknowledging Ryan's worth, now felt heavy on her shoulders. Lero, the young Vereen engineer, sat across from them, checking the portable power cells and scanning equipment. He kept glancing at Ryan, admiration written on his face. The human had gone into the storm alone and saved the generators. Lero had heard stories of human courage, but seeing it firsthand left him speechless. Ryan shifted slightly, wincing at the pain in his leg. How's the base holding up? He asked quietly. Alira nodded. The shield is stable. The units held the line against the enemy. Thanks to you, no one inside was hurt. Ryan closed his eyes for a moment. Good. That's all I needed to know. Alira stayed quiet, studying him. She wanted to say something, apologize perhaps, or thank him properly. But words failed her. She had insulted him before, called him a burden, doubted his ability. And yet here he was, quiet, still focused on others rather than his own pain. The transport slowed as they approached the base. The soldiers at the gates rushed forward, ready to assist Ryan. He stepped down carefully, using a support bar while they guided him toward the medbay. Alira followed behind, still silent. Inside the medbay, Ryan sat on the examination table while medics cleaned his wounds and checked his vitals. The pain was intense, but he endured it without complaint. He had faced worse. This, he told himself, was nothing compared to the lives he had saved. Alira watched from the corner, arms crossed. Her chest still felt tight. She had never expected humans to be like this, calm, brave, and determined even when everything around them was falling apart. She had judged him too quickly, letting pride and bias cloud her vision. Now she understood the depth of his strength. Lero spoke softly beside her. Commander, he did this all alone. No armor, no weapons. How can anyone survive like that? Alira finally answered, her voice steady but thoughtful. Humans are different. They fight with something we often overlook, heart. Strength is not always about logic or tools. Sometimes it is about doing what is right, even when it is impossible. The next day, the base was quiet. Repairs continued on the generators, and the soldiers cleaned equipment damaged during the storm and enemy attack. Ryan moved slowly among the teams, helping wherever he could, still without armor. His presence inspired the crew. Even the Vereen soldiers, who had doubted humans for years, now looked at him with newfound respect. Alira observed him as he worked. He did not boast. He did not demand recognition. Every motion, every word was measured, precise, and selfless. She thought back to her earlier words, the cruel ones she had spoken in the briefing room. For the first time, she felt guilt not from logic, but from empathy. She approached Ryan while he adjusted a broken conduit for the generator. "Ryan," she said softly. He looked up, meeting her gaze. "You should be resting," he said. "I wanted to speak to you," she replied. "About yesterday, and before that. I underestimated you. I spoke harshly and unfairly. I called you a burden. I see now how wrong I was." Ryan nodded slowly, his expression calm. "Commander, I don't fight for praise. I fight because it is the right thing to do." Alira took a deep breath. "Still my words. They hurt. You deserved better." Ryan gave a faint smile. "I have faced worse than words, and besides, actions speak louder than words. That is what matters in the end." Alira studied him for a moment. "You are not just brave, Ryan. You are something more. Something I cannot fully explain. Humans carry strength in ways we often cannot see until we witness it ourselves." Later that evening, the base gathered in the main hall for a brief ceremony honoring those who had defended the generators. Soldiers spoke of courage, teamwork, and quick thinking. Ryan, as usual, stayed at the back, quiet and composed. He did not seek recognition. The Vereen soldiers and other humans clapped, nodded, and whispered admiration, but he paid little attention. Alira approached him after the ceremony. "You know, if every human were like you, our galaxy would be a different place," she said. Ryan chuckled softly, rubbing the back of his neck. "Perhaps, but every person has their own way of helping. I just do mine differently," she nodded. "Your way is remarkable, and I have learned something important from it." "What is that?" he asked. "That even in silence, humans can speak louder than any words or weapons," Alira said. Ryan looked at her for a long moment, then turned to leave the hall. She watched him go, finally understanding that his silence had power. His quiet determination had reminded everyone that courage and honor are not measured by speeches, medals, or armor. They are measured by the heart. Days passed and the base returned to routine. The storm had left its mark on Careth 5 and repairs took time. Soldiers trained, generators were reinforced, and the outpost became stronger than before. Ryan continued his work quietly, helping everyone without seeking attention. Alira, meanwhile, reflected on what she had witnessed. She spoke with other officers privately, emphasizing the human example. "Do not underestimate their courage," she told them. "They may appear fragile or emotional, but they carry strength in ways we often cannot measure. Their choices, their heart, make them formidable allies." Even the youngest recruits listened with wide eyes, inspired by the story of the human who had walked out into a storm alone and returned victorious. One evening, Ryan walked along the perimeter of the base, alone for a while. The sky was clear, the moons reflecting silver light over the rocky ground. He thought about the storm, the attack, and the moments when life seemed impossible. He thought about Alira's words, her rare expression of acknowledgement. He did not need them to feel complete, but he understood their importance. Humans often measured strength not by words, but by actions. Yet recognition and understanding could inspire others to follow the same path. He paused on a high ridge overlooking the base. The generators hummed quietly in the distance. The shield glowed steady and strong, and soldiers moved through their tasks efficiently. For a moment he allowed himself to feel proud, not of himself, but of what humans could achieve when they fought with heart. A soft voice broke the silence. "Ryan." He turned to see Alira approaching. Her expression was calm but thoughtful, her steps careful on the rocky ground. "You could have stayed hidden," she said. "No one would have blamed you." Ryan shook his head. "If I had, the generators would have failed, the base would have been destroyed, and the soldiers inside would have suffered. I could not let that happen." Alira nodded slowly. You always put others first. That is rare. Ryan smiled faintly. It is what I know. I cannot do otherwise. She studied him in the moonlight. You teach all of us something important. About courage, about heart, and about humanity. And I am grateful, even if I am slow to admit it. Ryan looked down at his hands, quiet. That is enough, Commander. That is all I need to hear. They stood together for a moment, silent but connected by respect. Around them, the base continued its nightly routines. The quiet hum of generators, the soft chatter of soldiers, and the glow of the shield reminded them both that life went on, strengthened by courage and unity. In that moment, Alira understood fully what she had failed to see before. Humanity was not just a new player in the galaxy. It was a force that could inspire, endure, and change the course of events without raising its voice. Sometimes the strongest words were the ones left unspoken. Ryan finally turned and walked back toward the base. Alira watched him go, her heart lightened by the lesson he had taught without saying a single boastful word. He had walked away in silence before, but now the silence between them was no longer painful. It was filled with understanding and admiration. And somewhere deep inside, Alira knew that the galaxy had seen the first signs of a human legacy that would be remembered for generations. Weeks passed since the storm and the rebel attack on Careth 5. The base had recovered. Generators were repaired, shields reinforced, and the outpost was stronger than it had ever been. The soldiers moved efficiently, their training sharpened by the events of the past month. Yet, even as life returned to normal, the memory of what had happened could not be erased. Ryan Hale had resumed his quiet routine. He repaired broken equipment, helped train new recruits, and continued assisting the Vereen officers in tasks that required hands-on experience. But despite his constant presence, Ryan remained modest. He never spoke of his actions during the storm, nor did he claim credit for saving the base. Commander Alira Voss observed him closely. She had learned a powerful lesson about humans, one that she would never forget. Their courage was not loud or showy. It was calm, steady, and relentless. Humans acted without expectation of praise. They endured pain, they took risks, and they protected others because they knew it was the right thing to do. One morning, a distress signal came from a remote colony on the edge of the territory. The colony had lost power after a minor quake damaged the energy converters. The signal was weak and the automated system warned that survival depended on rapid repair. Alira studied the data. "We need someone skilled to go out there immediately," she said. Her voice was calm but firm. Laro, the young engineer, glanced at her nervously. "Commander, it is dangerous. The terrain is unstable. The humans, maybe they could handle it?" Alira looked at Ryan, who was quietly inspecting the shield readings nearby. She didn't need to ask. He already understood the unspoken request. Without hesitation, Ryan nodded. "I'll go," he said. The entire base knew the risks. The route to the colony was treacherous, with jagged rocks, deep fissures, and unstable weather patterns. And yet, without discussion or hesitation, Ryan began preparations. His actions inspired others immediately. Soldiers began checking the transport modules. Engineers prepared tools, and even the Vereen officers who had once doubted him now assisted silently. The journey to the colony took 2 days. Ryan moved carefully, conserving his energy while navigating the dangerous terrain. The sun scorched the rocks during the day and the nights were bitterly cold. He carried all necessary tools, but he traveled light, relying on his knowledge and experience rather than equipment. During the journey, he encountered a narrow canyon partially blocked by debris. Rocks had tumbled during the recent quake, making the path impassable for vehicles. Ryan assessed the situation. There was no one to help him, and the colony could not wait. He rolled up his sleeves, climbed the jagged rocks, and cleared a path with his bare hands. The effort left cuts and bruises on his arms, but he never slowed. When he reached the colony, he found that the energy converters were partially destroyed. The structures were unstable, the wiring melted in several places, and the local automated systems were offline. Without repair, the colony would be left in darkness, with food preservation and communication failing quickly. Ryan examined the equipment carefully. He formulated a plan to bypass the damaged circuits and reconnect the energy lines safely. Using spare materials he had carried and scavenged from nearby debris, he built temporary connections. Sparks flew, wires hissed, and the old generators groaned, but slowly power returned. When the colony lights flickered back on, children ran to the windows, their eyes wide with wonder at the glowing walls. Adults emerged from the shelters, their faces brightening in relief. Ryan did not smile. He only ensured the systems were stable and that nothing would fail again during his departure. Back at the outpost, Alira monitored his progress through the signal he left behind. She watched the energy readings stabilize and felt a swell of respect for the human soldier. Every action he had taken spoke of courage, patience, and unwavering determination. She addressed her officers. What we have witnessed is more than bravery. It is an example of humanity's strength. Not just muscle or weapons, but heart. A human can endure what many would call impossible. Ryanar nodded slowly. We may have underestimated humans before. I see now how wrong that was. Alira smiled faintly. This is only the beginning. We will need to remember what we have learned and not forget it. Days later, Ryan returned to the base. The journey had taken its toll. His hands were scratched, his body tired, but his eyes were bright. The colonists had waved him off with gratitude, and he had left them with functioning systems and instructions for maintenance. He had not sought acknowledgement. That was never his way. Alira met him as he entered the command room. She studied him for a long moment, then spoke quietly. You have done it again, Ryan. You went beyond what any of us thought possible. He looked at her, expression calm. I only did what had to be done. Others depend on the systems. Someone had to act, she nodded, understanding completely. You have taught me something I could not learn from books or reports. Strength is not always measured by logic, speed, or weapons. Sometimes it is measured by patience, heart, and the willingness to act when others cannot. Ryan said nothing, only looked at the floor. Words had never been his way. Actions were enough. A week later, the outpost held a formal ceremony. Not a celebration of medals or titles, but a gathering to honor those who had shown courage beyond expectation. Alira spoke to the assembly. Today, we recognize not only skill but heart, not only courage but perseverance. One human among us has shown what it means to fight with purpose, to endure in silence, and to act for the greater good without seeking praise. She paused, looking at Ryan. Let his example guide us all. Let it remind us that even in the darkest storms, humanity can light the way. The soldiers and officers stood nodding and applauding quietly. Ryan, as always, remained humble. He did not raise his head, did not speak, but his calm presence inspired everyone in the room. Even Alira felt her chest swell with admiration. She realized that she had judged him too quickly. He was not just a soldier. He was a symbol, a reminder of what humans could achieve when courage and heart combined. The weeks that followed saw Ryan continue his quiet work. He helped train new recruits, repaired broken systems, and guided soldiers in handling complex equipment. Each day he faced new challenges, but he approached them with the same steady calm that had saved the base and the colony. His legacy began to grow. Stories of his courage spread across the outpost into nearby colonies. They told of the human who had walked into storms, repaired generators under fire, and saved countless lives while remaining unarmed and alone. His actions inspired not only humans but also the Virine, who learned that courage was not species-specific. Alira made sure his lessons were never forgotten. She kept his armor in her quarters, a reminder of the human who had walked away from cruel words, acted with silent strength, and never sought recognition. She told new recruits about him, emphasizing that strength was measured not in pride but in the choices one made when no one was watching. Months later, the galaxy faced new threats. Conflicts arose and small outposts struggled to survive. Yet wherever humans went, courage followed. Ryan continued to serve with the same quiet dedication, always acting when needed, always putting others before himself. He never sought glory, never demanded respect. The only recognition he required was the knowledge that his actions had saved lives, inspired hope, and reminded others of humanity's enduring spirit. Alira watched him often, no longer filled with doubt or prideful anger. She had learned to respect humans not for their strength alone, but for the heart that guided it. She realized that the galaxy would be changed by such quiet courage. One evening, Ryan stood at the edge of the outpost looking at the stars above. The moons of Carith 5 reflected silver on the rocky ground. The shield hummed steadily behind him, a quiet testament to his efforts. He thought of the lives he had saved, the storms he had faced, and the lessons he had taught without a single boast. He smiled softly. Humans endured in silence. They acted without recognition. And in that, they carried a power that the galaxy could not ignore. Alira approached him silently, standing beside him as they watched the stars. "You have shown all of us what it truly means to be human," she said quietly. Ryan turned his gaze toward her. "I did only what was necessary. That is all any of us can do." She nodded, understanding completely. "And that is more than enough. Your legacy will be remembered long after we are gone." Ryan looked back at the outpost, the glowing generators and the shield standing strong. "Then it is enough," he said. And in the quiet of the night, with stars shining above and the world safe below, a human soldier's courage, humility, and heart left a mark that would inspire generations to come.